Hey folks, I'm Jeff Little, Pro Staff Director for Wilderness Systems Kayaks, and I'm going to talk about catching striped bass out of the Chesapeake Bay in a kayak. Do we have anyone in the audience who already has caught a striper out of the
Just
out of
yesterday.
the kayak? Yeah. Just yesterday?
Just yesterday.
Cool.
Right.
Where'd you get it on?
A jig minnow head.
Yep. Something like that?
Yep, very similar.
Yep. All right. Well, here's a few more. These are ones that I hand poured. Those are, I actually pour the jig myself with the Do It mold, and I have some molds to make my own soft plastic, so enjoy those. I'm actually more of a river smallmouth expert than I am a striper, but we do have Jed talking about river smallmouth fishing later on today, but I wanted to cover what I've learned, which is a great deal in about 2 years of chasing the striped bass. And it comes down to two approaches that do well for a kayak or really for any boat. And that's light tackle jigging, like what you did. Where'd you get it, by the way?
Launched out of Roman Coach.
Roman Coach? Okay,
yeah,
so you were out there with the Heroes on the Waters group, weren't you?
Actually were.
Very
yeah.
cool. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, no problem.
That's cool. The other really effective way to catch the striper is trolling, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But the first one I'm going to talk about is light tackle jigging, and I learned most of what I know about it from this book by Sean Kimbrough, Light Tackle Jigging, or Chesapeake Light Tackle, and he has a website with a blog with that same title. But that's it. Here, I'll go ahead and I'll write that down. You can pass that around and take a look at it. I've also been out with Sean a bunch of times on his boat, and I've shot a lot of video that explains some of the things that I'm going to tell you here in a minute. It's just more fun watching it actually happen out there. So that video's on my website, Tightline Junkies Journal. So I'll go ahead and grab a rod. This is one of my jigging rods, and why it's light tackle, this is actually only 15-pound braid, okay? Using this 15-pound braid, I caught the biggest one that I've caught. My personal best was 44.5 inches last February. And you wouldn't think that you're catching a huge fish like that with braided line that, I think it makes a lot of people nervous. But here's why. People worry that you're going to snap off a fish with such light line. But the reason why you do use such light line for these fish, and really low diameter line, is say you're up over a rock pile, and the rock pile is 20 feet below you, and the tide is ripping across it like this, and the fish are on the back side or maybe the front side, and you see them on your depth finder, and you thumb your spool and you let it down. It goes right down to them and it hits the bottom. This is real important. You want the line from the tip of your rod down to that jig to be as straight as possible. What you don't want is a big bow in it. And the wider diameter lines, if you're using say like 20-30 pound mono, you're going to have a big bow in the line, and you're not going to feel that bite nearly as well as when you have a 15-pound low diameter braided line. So it really comes down to being able to feel the bite, and usually it's as you're dropping it back down, and then I'm not going to do it, maybe I will do it full speed. Everyone's moving back. But maybe I'll do it out there. The best thing I can tell you is to watch some of the videos on my Tightline Junkies Journal and watch how fast Sean Kimbrough comes up with it. You're actually following it with the rod tip down, and imagine it's in deeper water, and you're waiting for it to feel that thud on the bottom. Does that sound familiar? You wait till it hits the bottom, and then as soon as you feel it go bump on the bottom, and it's kind of a thud, unless you hit rock and it'll be a crisp tap, but you feel it go boom, and then your rod tips up, and then you follow it back down, and you feel it go thud, and you bam, you really jack it hard to get it to come up really fast. So it's a 1-ounce head that I'm using. That's one that I made with a do-it mold. It's a Style 9 style jig head. There's a lot of different kinds that you can use. That's about a 7-inch soft plastic jerk bait, one that I hand poured. But the ones that are available on the market, there's the Bass Candy Delight is a real popular one. There are also Hoagies. There's a lot of different, you know, soft plastic jerk baits like that. The one that I caught my personal best on last February was another hand pour, and it was like that, a little bit sturdier hook, but that was about a 10-inch soft plastic. So that's a real brief overview of light tackle jigging. I'm just going to touch on some of the things that you're going to be looking for a good place to jig, and ultimately you're using a depth finder so you can see those fish on the screen. Sometimes you're going to see the bait fish on the screen, and then you'll see the darker marks underneath it, and those are usually your striper. A lot of times you'll just be out there paddling, you'll see birds over a bunch of, you know, feeding fish, and the fish are feeding this time of year on the peanut bunker. They're baby menhaden. They're just about yay big, and that's what the striper are looking to eat this time of year. So you look for birds, you look for the marks on the depth finder, and then you start jigging them. If you don't see any of that, you want to get a map that shows the contours, and you want to find drop-offs anywhere where there's, you know, you have a flat where it's you know, 8 to 12 feet, and then bam, it drops into 30 feet. Right on that drop-off is a good place. Bridges, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge is a great place to light tackle jig. Sean refers to it as Light Tackle Jigging University. It's a great place to learn how to light tackle jig. Other structures, I will tell you a real quick story about fishing the Susquehanna Flats. And sir, you mentioned you live up that way.
Yeah.
This time last year was doing really well because I found creek channels that ran through the flats. They're just drainage channels where you have you see the grass on this side, and you see the grass on this side, and the tide's going out, and you see a big swath of water just trucking through there. And it was as the tide was starting to come out, where it just changed, and it had been pushing in and flooding all that grass, and then it changed, and then it was exiting. And where I caught them was on the edge of that grass, maybe I was up in like 4.5, 5 foot of water, and you could see just half a cast beyond it, the grass was just choked up on the surface. All that water was evacuating the grass bed, and I was sitting in like 12 feet, which is deep for the flats. So they had moved up into that channel, and they were facing up into that little drop off where all that food's coming out. So a lot of different sort of linear drop offs. Anywhere you find rocks is a good place. And riprap, if you can find a rock pile out there somewhere on your depth finder, you're going to find fish on it. Let's move on and talk about trolling. This was actually a book that I helped Alan Batista. I helped edit it. I wrote the foreword for it, and I wanted to do anything that I could to repay him for what he had taught me in teaching me what's in this book. And he's one of us. He's a kayaker out on the bay, and he teaches in this book a system to really pare down a whole lot of water by trolling. You know, the more water you strain, the more you're able to figure out where are those hot spots, where are those you know, channels out on the flats, where are those isolated rock piles, you know. And you don't need the kind of trolling setup like they do in the boats, where they have the huge umbrella rigs and heavy line and you know, run a lot of gas and go all over the place. In fact, we do it better in kayaks because we have that stealth of, they don't hear the motors running, you know, they don't get sort of in a defensive, you know, mode because they hear a bigger boat. You know, we're really good at being stealthy in the kayaks. And basically you set up rod holders like this one here, I actually, you can use boats that have the pedal drive, or you can paddle. In either case, certainly with this sort of setup, you give yourself room for your paddle to come up and get a good bite on the water. I usually have two of them. I actually took it out this morning because I was trying to catch some largemouth out here, and this one was in my way. But you do the spread where you have two rod holders out to the sides, and usually I got a jerkbait on there. Okay, now Alan talks about using small, like mini umbrella rigs in his book. I'm actually playing around with some bottom dragging rigs, like a three-way swivel and a weight on the bottom and then a soft plastic behind. But it overall, the book teaches a good system on how to pare down a whole lot of water. He taught me last spring, and we shot a good video on his setup and on how to troll. And that's again on my website, Tight Line Junkies Journal. So, and it really kind of got a hold of me because we went out together, and I realized how effective it was because I had gone out to the same place that he was in, and we launched together, and I went out and I started jigging, and I'm really good at jigging. I catch a lot of nice striper jigging, but he kept zinging past me in the same spot. He's like, they're right here. I'm like, yeah, I know, I see it. And I was trying to jig him up. I wasn't getting him. Every time he passed me, he'd have both rods, drop down, and he'd catch, a 28 and a 22 right in front of me again and again. I'm like, okay, you got to teach me this light tackle trolling, and it's here in the book. In terms of rods, I actually don't have a whole lot of difference between my largemouth and smallmouth rods and what I take out in the bay. They're the same rods. This one is a St. Croix Legend Tournament Series Magnum cranker. It's a moderate action. Again, we have the 15-pound braided line. That's going to factor into how deep your line's going to go when you troll some of these. And this one's just a Rapala X-Wrap, saltwater X-Wrap. So, fall transition, they will move from, maybe I'll get a map out to show you. They'll move from the backs of the creeks you guys can kind of pull in here, and I'm just going to pick a creek and talk about the transition from, say, September to here. We're in the middle of October. Let's use the chop tank as an example. So certainly in August, in September, they will move up into the backs of these creeks here, and they'll feed on whatever they can. There's what I talked about, the peanut bunker. There are bay anchovies that the smaller ones will eat on, but there's a lot of food up in here. But as it starts to cool off, they'll move out towards places like where here's a pinch where you have a submerged point here and one here, and that constricts them, and that's on an outgoing tide. There's going to be a lot of water bottlenecked into a spot like that. But they're moving from the backs of the creeks. In September, October, they move out here, and then ultimately, as we move towards November, they get out towards the mouths of these bigger rivers on the eastern shore, and the west shore as well. They will move out towards the bay proper. It's not to say that you can't go out here into the main bay, year round and catch them. You can. But it's a whole lot of fun getting up into some of these creeks, maybe doing some topwater fishing. They move from the backs of the creeks and they start vacating. So you'll catch them, up in a creek real well one weekend, and you go back the next and they're gone. You don't see them on your depth finder, you don't see the birds, and you got to know, hey, I got to move in the direction of the bay. Get out towards that deeper water. And really, come this time of year, you're going to have amazing concentrations of those fish out in the creek mouths, or in the river mouths as it's entering the bay.